Tommy Marren Show on Midwest Radio with Harmony Hearing, your local fully qualified and accredited hearing care specialist. 096 48932. Harmony Hearing. Hear better, remember more.
So Bank of Ireland are closing loads of branches around the country, as we know, and they've done a deal with the post offices on Post to administer a lot of their banking services through the local post office network. But the question is the current post office business model suitable? Well, our next guests will argue that it probably isn't. In fact, they'll say it's obsolete, it's a round peg in a square hole, and that the post office network should be given a banking licence of its very own. I'm joined on the programme this morning by Seamus Maye, he's chair of the International Small Businesses Alliance, and by Tom O'Callaghan, who's chair of the Independent Postmasters Group. I might just go to Tom on this first, and then I'll come to you, Seamus. Thanks, Tom, for joining us.
Good morning, Tommy.
Good morning. So you represent Postmasters. Do you want a banking licence all of your own for Post and have nothing to do with Bank of Ireland?
Well, can I just put this into context? What I want, or what Postmasters would like to be able to say, is we want to be part of the community and to continue a service that the public want. And what I mean by that is to have a viable post office network that doesn't require long-term government subsidies. So the answer to the question is, yes, we are very serious about the fact that we believe as a postmaster, and Tommy, this is something that is of concern, and I'm speaking here in my opinion, we don't even know what the details of that deal are. You know, as a postmaster, we simply got a memo stating that there's a deal done, strict non-disclosure agreement, but yet postmasters right around the country, which are very annoyed, don't even know what entails or how much do they expect to get paid. And that is a real concern. So
you're more or less in the dark.
Oh, no, there's no question. Well, I tell you what is, and thankfully for media outlets like your good selves, is that we're after just getting a little bit of a news saying that it's potentially worth 2.5 million to the post office. But let's take this into context. The post office requires about 70-odd million net to be able to be open, lights on, in urban and rural. That figure, right, has dropped dramatically over the last number of years, and we know this because the cashless society, government have deliberately moved government contracts away from the post office network. So we need to look at, well, how are we going to maintain ourselves going forward? So if we're saying suddenly that we require that amount of money to stay open, and we're calling a deal with Bank of Ireland for only now, Tommy, and this is important we say this, only 2.5 million, which would probably represent about maybe 1,500, 2,000 income per annum for a post office as a great deal, I think questions need to be asked.
Okay, do you also agree, because part of the email I got was that postmasters and postmistresses are being turned into slaves, while the pillar banks are capturing the network and using it to provide cheap front-of-house operations whilst they close their branches and continue to have maximising of profits?
Well, I suppose that's how postmasters are feeling, is that we're simply there trying to do our very best to be part of the village and towns. But let's be again very clear. Over the last 12 months have been very difficult for postmasters, as you can imagine, Tommy, right? And our main concern has always, how do we keep the services going for our communities? You know, we class our customers as our friends, as family, because you get to know them over a number of years. And that element is very important. But then we have a situation where our income is dropping dramatically. And this is where the problem lies. UnPost strategy says that we're in partnership with Bank of Ireland. It's in line with their UnPost strategy. Well, on a personal level, I believe that's a wrong strategy because, the CEO for Bank of Ireland was on one of the main net radio, which stated basically is that decisions are made with the closures on the basis of in the best interest of their shareholders. Well, I have a problem with that because shareholders to me is profitability, whereas I think that the post office should be about in the interest of communities. And is this in the interest of communities? Is the profit for what's been proposed going back to the communities and villages? Well, the answer is no. So, no, I don't believe that this is a good deal.
Seamus, to you?
Thank you, Tommy, for airing this most important subject. Tommy, this proposed deal is an affront to postmasters, and it's an affront to consumers and citizens of Ireland. And if I could make just a few sort of background points, just to illustrate where I'm getting. First and foremost, we must look at the Irish Constitution. And that says in Article 45, subsection 2.4, it says simply that what pertains to the control of credit, pertains to the control of credit, the constant and predominant aim shall be the welfare of the people as a whole. Now, what we have done with banks, particularly since before the banking crisis and since, we have put banking on a pedestal. But Professor Steve Keane, he's a renowned economist and an expert on banking, and he had this to say. He said, ultimately, the financial sector should be the servant of the rest of the economy, not the master. But at the moment, it's the master of not just the economy, but of the politicians as well. So it is really wake-up time. And look, I am involved with the Public Banking Forum of Ireland for many years now, and we have done a lot of in-depth analysis of what's going on in the Irish banking sector. Now, it is my view that An Post and the Irish Postmasters Union have been playing loose and fast with postmasters, with their livelihoods and with Irish consumers over very many years now.
And what do you mean by loose and fast?
Well, for example, the previous contracts ran out with the post offices, and in July 2018 there was a new contract offered to all of the postmasters. But that contract was never going anywhere. I mean, I've called that contract a contract towards insolvency, and that is what actually has happened, because now the post offices are, on their own admission, they're requiring 17 million per year of the subsidy. So, I mean, and I know no post office where the son or the daughter or the cousin or anybody wants to come in and take over, because it's just simply the living is not there.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing about this as well is, I mean, many studies, for example, the Tomlinson report in the UK, they have established that large banks fail small business, that they have a size bias, and that they credit ration towards small businesses. And we must remember that it was a condition of the Troika bailout and of the state aid that was made to the various Irish pillar banks, that the state would introduce competition into the banking market. Now, what we must do is we must grant the post offices a banking licence, because they are the people, and it's the small banks. And I wouldn't exclude the credit unions. I don't exclude the credit unions, but they're possibly not for today's conversation. But if we want to develop and boost our indigenous economy, and I believe this can be done in a huge way, I believe we can develop our indigenous economy exponentially, but we must have cheap lending.
Okay.
And the other thing, one more point, Tommy, is interest rates. Interest rates in Ireland are crippling. They are up to, and in some cases over 5 times what our counterparts in Germany, which is part of the same single market, are being charged. You can get car loans, mortgages, everything for 1%, and a little along with 1% in Germany. I'm sorry, Tommy. We must look at one other thing: negative interest rates.
Yeah.
I mean, negative interest rates are pertaining in Ireland and they're pertaining in Europe. For example, the credit unions have to put their billions on deposit with the pillar banks and receive a negative interest rate. I mean, this money can be made available to post offices, and they can loan money out at a fraction, well, not fraction, but they can certainly loan money out at 2%.
All right, look, I know the argument here is that you know, the tail is wagging the dog here, and obviously there's people already texting in to say that, look, you know, the banks have the government in their back pocket, and you know, the banks in this country are far too powerful. However, last word to you, Tom, you know, it's going to take a massive mindset change, isn't it, to give a banking licence to the post offices?
Well, not really, because they've done this before. But what we're asking here is very simple. And Tommy, and I really, and you know, maybe is this what the word we call it, begging the public representatives, your local councillors, which I sometimes say the real politicians out there. I mean, we have written to 943 councillors. We provided all the information. The difference is what we're proposing, and there's nobody wanting to blame anybody here. You know, you could blame the post management, you could blame postmasters, you could turn around, blame government. The reality is that this is how do we protect our rural Ireland communities, keep them interlinked, keep them alive. And if you want to live and have an infrastructure, we need to maintain the post office. But on this one, Tommy, and I think it's important, what we're saying here is the potential, as like New Zealand, same population as Ireland, turned over 100 million net profit last year in their post office network. No closures. But the significant difference is the profits went back to their communities.
Okay, and that's the difference, not to the shareholders. Okay, listen, two wonderful speakers, and I wished I'd given this another 5 minutes. Unfortunately, I didn't, but I do apologise for that. But thank you so much for some very thought-provoking views there. Seamus Maye, Chair of the International Small Businesses Alliance, and Tom O'Callaghan, Chair of the Independent Postmasters Group. We will come back to this subject again in a few weeks, because I think it really is important. Thank you, lads, for joining us on the programme today.